In this one of the MayaBasics series, I'm going to look at the Bevel Tool. So what the Bevel Tool does, it can be used to round off edges. So in anything around that you're going to model, we don't have 90-degree angles, perfect 90-degree angles. So there's always a slight chamfer on there, slight bevel on there. So the Bevel Tool, we can use this in our Edit Mesh, and we've got our Bevel Tool here, Control B. And we can also use this in our modeling tools, and we can use our Bevel Tool here as well. Okay. So if I'm just, we can work in different ways on this. Generally, if I'm doing bevels, I'm working in edge mode. I'll just show you that you can work on object level as well. So just before I do this, I'm just going to go to shading. I'm going to set this to wireframe unshaded, just so you can see my different wireframes. I'll just switch the grid off as well for this. So in this example, let me just click on the box. So if I just add a bevel to this, see what it's doing is rounding off those edges. And in here I have a fraction amount. Okay. So just bring that fraction amount in. And what this is doing is rounding off the edges. And in this instance, we are getting triangles on the corner. Now if you do want to get away from that, what I can actually do is just add segments to this. Add 2 segments. And actually what that's doing is it's going to create quads on the corners. So we can smooth these things off. So just switch out of wireframe shaded. So you see now we have nice rounded edges, a beveled box essentially on that. And some 3D packages have actually a primitive called the Bevel Cube, and that's essentially what that's doing. Okay, so we can round our edges off that way. We could just get a set of edges. So I could just go in and select, say, those. So if I just want a certain area rounded off, again, just go into the Bevel Tool, bring that out. If it's going too far, you can just type in a value here, and we can actually change how that works as well. But if I just add some more segments to that, and what you should notice this is doing as well is it is rounding this off. It's averaging out the position of the segments. So if you take that down, you see we get a straight line between these. If I just put a multi-cut through this, so let me just put a multi-cut through, put that straight through. See, we still get a straight line on there. Okay. So do my bevel. If let's do this again. Let's do a Control B. Say 0.3. So let's add that segment to it again, and you can see that actually we're not creating a straight line on there. We are actually creating a rounded edge. And the same way we add more segments, so we're creating more roundness to that. So that's really useful to do if you're creating those rounded corners on something. Okay. We can also use it to create quick channels in some things. So sometimes if I want to create sort of a set of polys around an area, rather than actually putting another cut, so I could go in with my multi-cut tool or my insert edge loop, and I could create a cut around there to create a channel. But what I can also do is select that edge, Control B, and what that will do is actually essentially create an edge at either side of that, and create a set of polygons around there. And we could also add a segment if we still want that middle segment. Sometimes I will do 2 and then be able to take that out. Let's just click on that, shift double click, and then we could do something like an extrude on this, bring this in. So we have a channel which has a bit of some holding edges around it as well, which can be quite useful to do. Okay, so we can use it in that sense. Okay. They're the main settings essentially. Let's have a look at the bottom here. Again, let's just do Control B. Again, let's set my thing to say 0.04. I'll set my segments on. So if we set this chamfer off, then actually we're getting rid of that chamfer effect on there. So we're not rounding it off. What we're actually doing is just creating a new set of edges around that bottom face. So again, if we just take that segment off there, you can see we're just creating those new edges around this, averaging out between the point. Generally, if you're using a bevel, you do want that rounded off. Okay. And then the other thing we have on there is this depth. this is actually a bit easier to see on a cube. So let me just grab another cube. Let's go into this and let's set this to a meter square. And again, I'll just bevel the whole thing. See if this is working. There we go. So I've had more segments of this. So you'll see the depth there we have rounded off. This is kind of pushing those chamfered edges in here like that. So I have a different kind of effect. Okay. And again, if we just want to add more segments to that, I can do. So bevel, really useful for rounding off edges. If you are creating game assets, this is something that can be done if you're going to bake out this information. So what I could actually do is make just a normal, delete this, just delete this. I could create a normal cube. So let's do the same. Okay, bring this in here. So I create a normal cube, and then I can have one with beveled edges, and I can actually bake down this information from these rounded corners, and I can bake that into a normal map. So we can make our low poly, our version of this, still look like it has these rounded edges. So that can be quite useful. What you have to bear in mind that when we do this beveling, it is adding to the poly count. So in this case we have 6 faces on here. This one we have 54 faces on here. So it quickly adds up to the geometry count. So although it does look much nicer with the rounded off edges, you do have to be careful with it. Okay. So that's just a quick look at the bevel tool.